The series begins as a regular episode. Bluey is at home with Chili, Bandit, and Bingo, but the atmosphere immediately seems a bit strange. It's an overcast day, the house is dark, and no one wants to play. Chili is cleaning the kitchen, Bandit is reading the newspaper, and Bingo is just lying on the couch and being quiet. She looks tired, almost unresponsive. Bluey walks around the house trying to think of something to do. She wanders into the pantry and there's something strange catches her attention. A low wooden door in the wall. It looks very old, like it's 100 years old. Bluey is sure that this door wasn't there before. Curiosity takes over, so she pushes the boxes aside, turns the rusty key sticking out of the lock and opens the door. Inside is a narrow dark hallway with a bluish light at the end. Without much thought, Bluey crawls inside. On the other side is the exact same house, only brighter, cleaner, more colorful. Chili, Bandit, and Bingo meet her there, only with one creepy difference. They all have black buttons for eyes. They smile, they act affectionate. Chili immediately suggests Bluey play her favorite game. The Bandit dances like an episode of disco and Bingo laughs louder than usual. Bluey is excited at first. Everything looks like the perfect version of her life. But pretty quickly she notices oddities. First of all, everything in the world is adjusting to her. As soon as she thinks of something, it appears. Second, Bingo is acting a little unnatural. Her smile is too strained. She keeps repeating the same phrase. It's better. Much better. Later, the other Chili tells Bluey that she can stay here forever. But to do that, she needs to, quote, become part of the family. Which means sewing buttons on herself instead of eyes. Bluey is horrified. She realizes this isn't her real family. It's not Chili's, it's not Bandit, and it's not Bingo. She tries to escape but finds only long hallways leading nowhere. The house starts to change. The walls move. The floor becomes viscous. The other Bandit doesn't smile now. His body stretches out. His movements become abrupt, unnatural. He speaks in a distorted voice and begins to chase Bluey. Bluey screams, calling for the real Chili, but no one answers. In one of the rooms, she finds Bingo tied up with string. Her eyes are half-sewn buttons. She whispers, "It's not me. Go away, please." Her strength is almost at an end, but Bluey finds a passage back. The same door is still open. She runs towards it, but the other Chili grabs her paw. She's still smiling, but her face starts to blur. "You're not leaving. We're family now forever." Bluey lashes out at the last moment and slips through the door. Bluey wakes up in his bed. The clock reads 3:33. The house looks normal. Everything is in its place. Chili is calling her to breakfast. Bandit is yawning in a chair and Bingo is playing in the living room. Bluey seems to be calming down, but when she jumps off the bed and puts her paw on the floor, she steps on a black button. The series ends abruptly. No credits, just a black screen. And a quiet whisper, barely audible in the background noise. "Are you still here?" There's a lost Bluey episode known to very few. It's called The Sandbox. They say it aired once, very early in the morning when almost no one was watching. Then it disappeared, as if it had never existed. The episode started normally. Bluey and Bingo were playing at the park. It was a bright, quiet afternoon. Birds sang softly in the background. Everything felt normal. Almost too normal. Bingo found a sandbox tucked away in a far corner. A place they'd never noticed before. It looked old, forgotten. The sand inside was darker, almost gray. Bingo jumped in first. She laughed, digging with her paws. Bluey joined her, smiling. But when she dug deeper, her paw touched something hard. A wooden board, buried just beneath the surface. They brushed the sand away, revealing a trapdoor. Old, rotten, with a rusty handle. Bingo giggled and pulled it open. Cold air rushed out from below. A narrow hole, leading into darkness. Bluey hesitated. Bingo, more curious, lowered herself into the hole. Her voice echoed from below. "It's just a tunnel, come on!" Bluey followed. The tunnel sloped down deeper and deeper. Their giggles faded, swallowed by the earth. The walls were dirt, packed and crumbling. And soon, there were doors. Wooden doors, each one slightly ajar. Behind some, empty rooms. Behind others, shadows that moved just out of sight. The further they went, the more the tunnels branched out. Twisting, splitting, leading nowhere. Or maybe, somewhere they shouldn't go. Bluey called for Bingo. No answer, only a hollow, wet echo. She ran, turning corners blindly. The dirt under her paws grew cold and slick. She passed rooms where toys floated weightlessly, rooms where faint crying echoed without a source. In one room, she thought she saw herself, a version of her staring back through a dusty window, but it didn't move, didn't blink. It only watched. Finally, after what felt like hours, Bluey found the trapdoor again. She scrambled out, pulling herself back into the daylight. The park was empty, silent. The sky was darker now, bruised purple and gray. Bingo sat alone on the swings, staring at the ground, silent, still. Bluey called to her. Bingo looked up and smiled, but her eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark. The episode ended with Bluey standing frozen, watching her sister swing slowly back and forth. The wind howled. The camera pulled away, rising higher and higher, showing the sandbox from above, and the dozens of small rotted trapdoors, hidden all across the ground. The screen faded to black. No music, only the low sound of something shifting, deep beneath the earth. The Healer house began its morning like any other. Sunlight poured into the yard, Bluey and Bingo were getting ready to play outside, and Bandit and Chili bustled in the kitchen. The familiar scent of joy and freshness hung in the air. Yet, even then something was off. A subtle shadow flickered behind the bushes in the backyard, too tall to be a neighbor's child, too still to be merely a tree's shade. Bluey stepped into the yard and started playing with her ball. Each time the ball rolled towards the far fence, she felt a gaze upon her. She sensed someone behind the old half-ruined garden shed. She threw the ball harder, and for a fleeting moment she saw it. A tall, slender figure stood absolutely motionless. It resembled a dog but had no face, just a smooth dark surface that seemed to absorb the light. Bluey blinked and the figure was gone. She tried to tell Bandit, but he was too busy playing chasey with Bingo. "Just shadows playing with you, Bluey," he chuckled. Bluey tried to forget, but now, wherever she went, she felt his presence. In the kitchen window, as Chili cooked breakfast, his reflection flickered. Behind the tree at the playground, swinging on the swings, he was always there if she didn't look directly. The house began to change. The bright colors faded, the air grew heavy and cold. Toys weren't left where they belonged. At night, Bluey heard a faint scratching sound from within the walls, as if something was slowly crawling through the wires. And in the morning, new drawings appeared on the fridge. Strange, childlike scribbles depicting the Healer family, but always with this tall, faceless figure standing nearby amidst their games and laughter. One day, Bluey and Bingo were playing in their room when the lights suddenly went out. From the darkness came a very soft, drawn-out whisper like rustling leaves, but uttering their names. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Bingo began to cry and the lights flickered back on, but the room was different. Bingo's toys were scattered, and among them stood one Bluey had never seen before. A tall, thin, faceless doll looking exactly like the observer. The doll didn't move, but its presence was overwhelming. Bluey took Bingo's paw. They slowly backed out of the room. Behind them, the doll slowly tilted its head. Then its empty head turned and fixed itself on the exact spot where they had been standing. The house plunged into a suffocating silence. The episode ended with the family huddled together in the living room. They tried to laugh and play as usual, but their laughter was strained, and their eyes constantly darted around the room, searching for something that might be hiding in any shadow. Outside the window just beyond the glass, he stood, tall, silent, faceless. He simply watched, and now his silhouette was far clearer than ever before. The screen slowly faded to black, leaving only a ringing silence. The Healer family's morning began bright and sunny as they headed out for a walk in a remote park. It was a new place they'd never visited before, vast fields surrounded by dense woods, not a soul in sight. Bluey and Bingo raced ahead, laughing joyfully, while Bandit and Chili followed, enjoying the peace and quiet. Deep within the park, by the edge of an old pond, they saw another family of blue healers, absolutely identical to them. There were 4 of them, one dog resembling Bandit, another like Chili, and 2 small exact copies of Bluey and Bingo. They sat motionless, not playing, not talking, just staring at the pond with empty, unblinking eyes. Bluey and Bingo froze, gazing at their doppelgangers. The copies said nothing, but their presence was incredibly unsettling. They were the same, yet utterly different. Their fur seemed a little duller, their poses a bit too perfect, as if frozen. Bandit tried to say hello, but the other bandit slowly turned its head and stared at him. There was no joy or recognition in its eyes, only a deep, unnerving void. Chili felt a chill run down her spine as the other Chili slowly raised a paw and extended it as if trying to touch her. Gradually, imperceptibly, the others began to move. They stood up, their movements synchronized and robotic. They didn't run or rush, but smoothly, inexorably closed the distance, like specters gliding across the grass. The healers felt their energy draining, as if their life force was being siphoned away with each step the copies took. The air around them grew heavy, and the sounds of nature, even the birdsong, fell silent. The others were now very close, their empty eyes fixed on Bluey, on Bingo. The shadows cast by the copies were all wrong, too dense. The Bluey and Bingo copies slowly extended their paws towards their originals. Their fingers too long, their fur feeling cold and dry. The healers couldn't escape. In the final shots of the episode, Bandit and Chili are seen collapsing to the ground, their eyes glazing over, their faces frozen in expressions of horror and emptiness. The other Bluey and Bingo silently bend over them, and then the shot pulls up, showing 4 identical but vacant figures standing over 2 bodies on the grass. The episode ends with these 4 copies now perfectly mimicking their originals, but with a subtle, lifeless emptiness in their eyes, slowly turning and leaving the park. They walk down the familiar road towards the healer house, their steps making no sound. The screen fades to black. The morning in the healer household began as usual, filled with sunshine and laughter. Bluey and Bingo chased each other around the yard, while Bandit, their dad, sipped coffee on the veranda, watching them with a smile. Chili, their mum, joined him after finishing her morning tasks. Everything was perfect and familiar, but then an unusual parcel appeared on the porch. There was no return address, just a plain brown box as if hastily packed. Curiosity won out and Bandit opened it. Inside, to Bluey's utter delight, lay a brand new shiny figurine. It was a Labubu bright pink with its pointed ears and characteristic toothy bared grin. Bluey immediately snatched it up, hugged it close and named it Smiley. She was thrilled. Smiley instantly became her shadow. Wherever Bluey went, Labubu was there, on walks, during games, even sleeping beside her on her pillow. Her joy was infectious and her parents saw nothing wrong with it. However, very soon inexplicable things began to happen in the house. First, it was minor disappearances. Bandit's favorite pen, Chili's hair clip, Bingo's toy block. No one could figure out where these items went. Then, Bluey began complaining about quiet whispers coming from her room at night. She'd whisper to her parents that Smiley was talking to her, but Bandit and Chili dismissed it as a child's vivid imagination. One night, Bandit woke up feeling thirsty. On his way to the kitchen, he heard a strange scratching sound coming from the living room. Pausing, he cautiously peered into the gloom. In the faint moonlight, he saw Smiley the Labubu sitting on the rug. Its head was turned as if looking directly at Bandit, and its toothy grin seemed unnaturally wide. Bandit blinked and the figurine was motionless again, seemingly in the exact same spot. He convinced himself he was just tired. But the unease grew. Bluey's behavior began to change. She became withdrawn, often retreating to a corner of the room, whispering to Smiley. Her usual boisterous games took a back seat. Now she preferred to sit still, stroking the figurine. At times, her eyes would look strangely vacant and her smile somehow mechanical. The tension peaked when Bingo, wanting to play, tried to take Smiley. For the first time, Bluey reacted with unseen aggression. She growled, snatched Labubu away and clutched it tightly, a cold, inhuman rage flaring in her usually kind eyes. Bingo cried out in fright. Chili and Bandit were genuinely scared. They decided the toy was having a bad influence on their daughter. Later that night, while Bluey was fast asleep, Bandit carefully took Labubu from her grasp. He intended to hide it away. The moment his fingers touched the plastic, he felt an icy coldness pierce his hand. And the figurine itself momentarily felt soft, like living flesh, pulsing beneath his touch. Labubu's grin seemed to widen even further, and its glass eyes briefly flashed with a dull red light. Bandit thought he heard a faint, mocking chuckle. Stunned and frightened, he dropped Labubu. The figurine hit the floor with a dull thud, but then to his horror it slowly swayed and stood upright. Its eyes were fixed directly on Bandit, and its smile, it was no longer just a smile. It was the grimace of a predator. Bandit, consumed by panic, snatched Labubu and without a second thought tossed it into the outdoor rubbish bin. He returned to the house, breathing heavily, and told Chili everything that had happened. They decided never to mention it to Bluey. The next morning, Bluey woke up. She immediately reached for the spot where Smiley should have been. When she realized it was gone, her face twisted not just with sadness but with something darker and more sinister. She slowly got up, walked to the window, and looked directly at the rubbish bin where Bandit had thrown Labubu the night before. A slow, chilling smile spread across her face, almost an exact replica of Labubu's grin, and in her eyes there was that same cold, inhuman glint. From that day on, Bluey was never quite the same. Sometimes when she plays, her gaze becomes empty, and her laughter sounds too sharp, almost alien. And if you look very closely into the shadows of her room, you might just catch a faint pink glimmer and two glowing points, watching from the darkness. They are waiting.